Y'all, I just started reading The Dragon's Pretend Marriage over here by Layla Silver, and it is fucking hilarious. He is sitting there with this chick he's not that into, and he's saying how his antenna hasn't twitched at all. And seriously, you're gonna call your dick an antenna? What the fuck am I even reading? I think this is gonna be a crazy shit show. But I'm also kind of ready for some more. Update. Milton is a rich kid. That's why his name is fucking Milton, because rich people have names like that. Secondly, apparently his parents are so desperate to get him mated and married or whatever, they are paying people to go on dates with him. I don't think it's just about their desperation though, because this guy is insufferable. I fucking hate him. Like, am I supposed to side with him and feel bad for him when he's being an obvious asshat? It's not cool that his parents are paying people to date him, but it's also not cool for him to be shitty to people. Maybe he should do some introspection and come back to us. So Milton has called the girl he's on a date with a gold digger, a liar, a woman who can't make her clothes match and who picked a shade that, while pretty, doesn't suit her. Called her the wrong name twice now. He says to her,
"Listen, it's nothing personal. I'm just not keen on being hoodwinked." I grabbed an extra bill from my wallet and handed it to her. "Get yourself an actual Gucci dress and some posh. Just around the corner. Vivian knows me by name. Just go ahead and drop it."
I hate this dude. I can't believe this is the guy our Chica is supposed to have a crush on. I'm probably not gonna like this book, but at the same time, it's so wild. It's so bad that I just can't help but want to keep reading more. It seems like he has a lot of popularity and attention just because he's a billionaire, and at the same time is trying to make me feel bad for poor old Milton because he just wants to be normal. I'm sorry, I don't feel bad for you that you want for fucking nothing. So Milton says,
I gave myself a few more minutes to feel sorry for myself. It may have been in poor taste to be a total jerk to a lady in public, but it was pretty par for the course with me. Didn't my parents want me to act like myself?
my guy, nobody wants you to fucking act like yourself if it involves being a jerk to people for no goddamn reason. No one made you go to this date. There were a million things you could have done that wasn't this. Broski goes into the bar and says,
Human bars are all the same. Every bartender is wearing the same torn up shirt and jeans.
You're going to the wrong bars. Human bars are not all the same. So this whole description just sort of either describes a dude doesn't know anything about anything and is super unobservant, or it's like an author who's never been to a fucking bar in her life. I don't know which one it is at this point in time, but I just wanted to point out that this book is hilariously bad and hilariously wrong. But I do want to give this book props because a little bit further it's talking about how desirable this guy is and how everybody wants them.
It's as if starlight followed me everywhere, and with that came a group of women, and sometimes men, and sometimes other genders hounding me.
I'm gonna love it when we go ahead and acknowledge that any gender is fine, gender is a social construct, and however you identify is good for you. So yay, this book has got one thing right so far. But then Milton goes on to be a further jerk and he says,
One of the chicks would probably see me flash a bill or something.
yeah, because women be watching exactly what men be doing with bouncers all the time. We just can't help it. We gotta see who has the money. Oh my god, this man is so fucking disrespectful to women all the time. Is this really supposed to be my love interest? This is supposed to be a bully romance, so I am right now rooting for our protagonist to really take him down 9 million pegs. I don't know why she's attracted to him. I don't know why she ever had a crush on this dude. But you know what? We were all young, we were all stupid, and we all had that bad decision dude. Thank God we've gone into chapter 2 and now we're in Brandy's perspective. I was afraid I was going crazy and that we were supposed to like Milton, or that our author wasn't aware of how unlikable she'd written him. But the second paragraph here says,
Seeing Milton walk up to the counter was a damn blessing. The guy was a total jerk, a player, a loser, and a bully. But he was just the kind of bully I need to keep around if I wanted to keep my fingers.
I'm assuming that Brandy's the kind of girl that gets into trouble, gets in over her head, makes bets and stuff, and a tough guy like Milton keeps people from chopping her fingers off to pay her dues. I don't freaking know right now. But at least she is self-aware enough to know the guy is a jerk, player, a loser, and a bully. Because those are all the things we already seen on display. And if she was he'd just be so handsome, so much money, and such a good guy, I'd have lost my mind. Oh, Brandy is also the kind of bitch that doesn't like a lot of attention and feels awkward that she is rando in the spotlight. Great. So we're gonna have two super famous, super rich people complaining about the fact that they're rich and famous. That's probably not gonna get on my nerves at all. We finished chapter 2, she's popped her proposal to Milton, and he's like a little too eager to accept the fake mating situation. He did indicate in chapter 1 he was attracted to her, but I feel like the guy's got something up his sleeve too. We're gonna see, we're about to go on like a Pretty Woman shopping style adventure before they go out to a real fancy club. So things are about to get funny and wild, and I think I'm ready to settle in. You're probably gonna get a lot less updates now, but I will try to check in at least when I get to like the 25 or 50% mark here. It's been a few days since I was reading parts of the Dragon's Pretend Marriage by Layla Silver. I did end up finishing the story. There wasn't anything like super remarkable for me to stop in the middle of and update you on. Overall, I'm giving the story 3 stars because it did bring me out of a reading slump. Since reading that book, I've finished the entire of the Weakest Mate series, and I've started the Chain series. I guess I'm just really on a werewolf shifter kick right now. But to conclude with the Dragon's Pretend Marriage, this is kind of a bad story. If it wasn't for the fact that it had brought me out of a reading slump, it'd probably be closer to like 2 or 1 stars. It's poorly written, it's confusing. I have no idea why the dragon shifter or the werewolf shifter or the pack elements are part of this story. It seems like you could tell it's completely mundane and not change pretty much any of it. And on top of like the supernatural elements not bringing anything, there's this uncomfortable element of like over focusing on people's skin tone. And granted, everyone here is white, but at the same time, I don't like it. Like, I don't enjoy when people overvalue like pale skin or overfocus on it. It just, there's something about focusing on a person's skin tone regardless of what the tone is that strikes me as like significantly uncomfortable and kind of like fetishy in a way that leads to like further difficulties in areas that I don't really want to delve in this video. But it seems to me like whether you're overfocused on dark skin or you are overfocused on light skin or some kind of in between, you're like paying too much attention to a person's skin tone and like coming off like in a supremacist kind of way that you probably don't want to. Also, the dragon themselves comes off as like very cringy 2000 goth kid, and that's kind of weird to me because this story was published in February of 2023, and I'm wondering like who is the audience for this? Is it supposed to be me and like recalling my years as a teen and like what the dynamics were as a teen? Because I'm pretty sure like that cringy 2000 weird goth kid thing, emo kid thing, is no longer like that in the scene with young people. It seems like out of touch if it was going for like a realistic portrayal of younger people. And then like the whole pack dynamics as they explain it, like this dragon is part of the pack, but his parents don't understand the pack mentality, and this werewolf chick is part of the pack, but she doesn't ask the pack for help or explain the situation she's in with the pack or any of that stuff. Like, it's very confusing. Like, what is the point of this pack? Are they just like a social club? Are they actually a family? Like, there's no strong sense of pack dynamics there. There's no really good explanation for why like super rich dragon shifters would be part of this pack, but for some reason there'd still be poor people or people struggling to survive in the pack at the same time. Like, if you're actually part of this family structure and listening to the alpha and all these other elements, wouldn't you guys kind of like all pull your resources together, make sure that everyone was living well? You don't have to give everyone all the ultra rich luxuries in the world, but worrying about housing, schooling, careers should not be on the docket if you've got a member of the pack who's like in the 99%. And it's even stranger to me because the dragon dude is supposed to be really good friends with Brandy's brother, and yet there's obviously some kind of rift between Brandy and her parents, and maybe Brandy's brother and her parents, and it seems like they didn't support them, and like these two kids grew up with nothing. But at the same time, you've got like a rich playboy friend who has a trust, who never helped you out or made sure everything was okay. Like, that's weird. And it's even stranger to me because Brandy does bring up at one point in time that she was bullied by Milton, and I thought that was like, yes, we're finally gonna get into it. I'm gonna learn what this bullying was. Milton's gonna have to apologize. And Milton's like, I don't even remember that. And we never talk about it again, which sort of like reaffirms for me that that idea that Milton is just this huge, gross, disgusting jerk is true. And it also sort of like undermines the whole like bully romance, enemies to lovers element, because to me, if it's a bully romance, then we need to actually discuss or witness the bullying, and then we need to address it in some way. Him just sort of like shoulder shrugging it and us never talking about it again doesn't make any sense. There's this element in the story where Milton is a jerk to women for good reason because he has trust issues, but the reason he has is bullshit and stupid, and it doesn't justify how much of a jerk and how untrusting he is to other people, including Brandy. It's just like a rushed, slapdash, poorly constructed story that doesn't really understand what makes the buzzwords it's using interesting and compelling to readers. So like, I didn't get the bully romance element, I didn't get a forced proximity, forced marriage element, and I didn't get any werewolf shifter element. And these are the three things this thing promised to me. So I was like, what the fuck am I even reading right now? The only good thing I can say about this story is Milton called his dick an antenna in the first couple pages of the book, and he never does that again. So thank God for small favors, I guess. From there, I tore through the Weakest Wolf series by Eva Bale. There's 3 books in the series, and all 3 of the books are about the same couple. And all 3 of these books are like a manageable 230, 250-ish pages, which is probably part of what helped me flip through them quickly. Overall, it delivers on what it's promised. We're introduced to this woman who is a submissive wolf, whatever the heck that means, because that part's not very well explained. And she is hiding secrets from this alpha dude who just took over her crap pack. And the alpha dude does come off as like kind of junky too, but like junky with reason, in air quotes. So I liked that she had a secret, that it was important, that she stuck to her guns and didn't reveal it. I like that she stood up to people and that she was clever and was able to hide things and had like this interesting dynamic. I like how throughout the series she was able to kind of like start to collect herself, heal from the sort of trauma she'd come through, and even like pull people together to like make plans and create more unity in the pack and help other people on their journey too. Because the series follows the same couple in 3 different books, it breaks at kind of weird points. I think the first book braked at a pretty good point. Like, we got a decent resolution before we moved into the next part of their story, and you could read the first book without continuing into the second and third. But by the end of that first book, I was hooked. I knew where they were going to go with the next 2 books as far as like what the problems and challenges would be in their relationship, and I was interested to see where those went. The second book, I think, leaves off in a slightly more awkward point, like significantly less resolved, but I kind of appreciate it just from the standpoint that the books are short with clear endings, so I knew where I was going to pick up next, if you will. And I'm about 75% through Chained by Casey Lee and Raven Storm. I picked this book up partially because it's about a female alpha, partially because the last paragraph suggests that people who like Jaime Neve stories and Leah Stone stories and Kelly St. Clark stories will like this. As far as comparisons go, I feel like this is a very early Jaime Eve work, like before she really found her writing chops. The story lacks a lot of writing skill and talent and is kind of like the mark of juvenile writers. The Leah Stone comparison is significantly more apt in my view because of the stilted dialogue, the overemphasis of certain elements of the story, generally the feeling of a lack of direction, lack of planning, and lack of overall cohesiveness in the story. I'm definitely going to finish this first book. I might push into the second or third just to see where it's going. But right now it's pretty frustrating. I don't necessarily like any of our characters. It's just very messy. The only thing that I am enjoying about the books right now is the idea of like pack unity and creating like a sustainable community outside of our current social norms, what that looks like, what that means. Those kind of like elements are still coming through in this story, and in that way this series is doing a lot more than the first one with the Dragon Shifter was. Reading update. I finished Chain by Casey Lee and Ravenstorm, and I'm going to get into a little bit about that in just a minute. But before I do, I want to backtrack to the Weakest Wolf series. I was updating my Goodreads profile to include those books as books I've read this year. I noticed that the cover that looked like this on Amazon actually looks like this on Goodreads. I'd originally decided not to mention anything about the cover art when it comes to the Weakest Wolf series because the character is racially ambiguous, let's say. There's no pictures or information about the author, and within the stories themselves, like skin tone and race is in no way, shape, or form mentioned. So there's not a lot of conclusions you can draw based off of these two covers, what her goal was selling demographic wise or pitching wise, or even if she necessarily had a lot of choice in the matter. But to see that the cover went from like someone who's clearly very white over in Goodreads to this like more ambiguous cover here in Amazon makes me feel a little icky about the series, and it makes me hesitate a little bit about recommending it. Again, I did look at the author's website, I looked at their Goodreads profile, and I looked at their Amazon profile, and I couldn't really find any information about them or their goals in storytelling that sort of tells me if they're trying to tell diverse stories, if they're part of this group. Great if you just want to pretend in your head that there's a bunch of diverse characters running around, but it might not be so great if you wanted like either explicit diversity or an explicit own voices story. So just something to be aware of. And getting back to Chained, I did not like how the first book ended, and at the end of this first book, I can say it's objectively pretty crap and I don't like it. The love interest here is going to be Derek. I actually see a lot of warning signs and concerning things about him that make me think that he's like low-key abusive too. I don't get any kind of character anything from Bailey. She is a confused hot mess with no clear direction or viewpoint. I like a strong chick. I like a determined chick. I like someone who doesn't back down from a fight, but I'm not really getting any like specific note or hint about her direction or her goals or whatever. The side characters are the side characters, like Derek's mom is just there. The coyote shifter that Billy befriends exists, as does her love interest, the beta Xavier, and the obvious villains Rebecca and her dad Victor are there too. That's another thing I didn't like about Derek, or the setup for this romance, is that he is engaged to his best friend Rebecca, specifically like for the stability of the pack, and I won't get into it because it doesn't really matter. I didn't like her because she is mean and petty and materialistic and obviously all of these things, and never nice or kind or giving or charitable to anyone. But we are somehow supposed to believe that her and Derek grew up together and were best friends, and he never noticed that she's kind of a bitch. Like, how super unobservant is Derek? Or has she always been like super sweet and nice to him and just randomly stopped when they got engaged? Because it's very obvious to us, the readers, that she isn't even nice or kind to Derek. She's just like kind of like grabby and demanding. So we have no idea why they had a friendship, why he would want to preserve that friendship, why that friendship would mean anything to him. And then on top of that, it adds like the complication that when he gets this instant attraction to Bailey and the two of them start like messing around and stuff, now he's a cheater. We should probably have no sympathy for and hate, but it's kind of hard to hate her given that her fiance is cheating on her. Her fiance threatened to kill her dad. And I know her dad's not a good dude or whatever, but like from her perspective, it seems like this guy is a super controlling, dangerous asshole she has to appease and then put up with bad behavior from. Like, no wonder she is like kind of exactly responding the way Bailey was when she was in a similar situation. And it feels like the book is not very self-aware about that. That said, I'm into the first chapter in the second book, Claimed, because the first book does leave us on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and it sounds like Bailey might have a plan and might be getting revenge. And I'm down for like a planned out revenge plan where we might actually see Bailey doing the strong, empowered things I wanted to see in the first book. So far, all I've got is Derek being incredibly violent and unreasonable, which is kind of how I already sort of pictured him. Also, in this book, like the whole alpha structure thing is very confusing to me. They're like, alphas never say they're sorry and they never submit and they never back down, but like none of that makes you a very good leader. If you can't listen to other people and admit when you're wrong and go with their plan instead, you can't let someone else with more experience or who's better prepared to take over something do that while you step back and take care of some things, you're just not a good leader. And this is something a lot of werewolf books get wrong. They really don't explain the alpha omega situation. Like even back in the Weakest Wolf, that one was like super focused on the submissive wolf, and they never really freaking explained why there would be a submissive wolf. They kept talking about how the whole pack has to rally around that wolf and protect them and stuff, but like there's gotta be a reason that wolf exists, right? Like, do you just need a lot of worker bees who are like willing and able and happy to fulfill other people's demands? Is their efficiency or their like general happiness pleasing other people like worthwhile in a pack and creates balance and calm, general like ease within the pack? Is their health and happiness something that sort of like sets everybody else at ease? Like, there's got to be something going on there. some kind of strength or benefit, or they wouldn't exist at all. And we never really explore that or discuss that. Instead, in Weakest Wolf, we're kind of like always dealing with the fact that she's not a common submissive and that she's secretly very alpha, and that being alpha is good and being submissive is bad. And I just don't think it addresses the core issues in this like alpha omega pack structure that we see a lot in werewolf books. We're seeing a lot of the same thing here in the chained claimed books, except it's like all focused on the alphas, actually revealing why being submissive would be a positive thing. Like if Bailey had been able to submit to Derek at one point in time in the story, then she would have been part of the pack, which would have given her extra protection. It would have healed her life-threatening injuries at that exact moment. Giving into someone one time or letting one person take the lead one time does not mean that you have committed forever to their leadership or to their prowess or whatever the deal is. And of course, this is like the core flaw in alpha omega wolf pack structures or alpha omega mindsets in humans in general. We as social creatures take turns taking the lead. That said, in the chained claimed books, I am kind of enjoying the pack elements that are on display here. They're very bare bones, but there's something there that I'm enjoying, and that's also part of why I'm reading more, is because I'd like to get a little bit more pack interaction, family, group togetherness, community kind of feel. So update on the Chained series, I'm into book 2, Claimed, and I'm about 54% through. The series is rife with immature writing, a lot of telling instead of showing, a long and ponderous kind of like debate or struggle to come to grips with what it means to be an alpha and who can be an alpha, and possibly why we thought historically only men can be alphas in this werewolf pack scenario. All of it kind of sucks. I don't like Derek at all. He is so old, so far into adulthood, like way too far in to be acting the way he's acting. And that's making it very difficult for me to be on his side or to be rooting for his development or for me to even feel like any kind of patience with him. And then Bailey is so flat. I realize that she is like gone back into an abusive scenario and she's trying to lay low, but it just feels like all the notes about who she is as a character, what she can and can't do, how she can or cannot control herself in any given situation, like it's very wishy-washy. And then they made Rebecca so unlikable in book 1, and here in book 2 they're trying to give her some kind of redemption arc. I'm not into it. I am not enjoying myself. I would say this is very much like early Jamie and Eve books before she really kind of found her footing as a writer and like significantly improved her craft. Anything I've ever read by Leah Stone, and to be fair, it's been a minute since I've read anything by her, and I really should give her a second chance because I enjoyed her premises even though I didn't like the books. If you're into that more juvenile, lower end writing, like people early in their careers sort of trying to find their voice, find their style, and figure out what is working for them, then this might be interesting for you. It might also be interesting if you're a writer and you're just kind of looking at something for like what not to do. And because I'm not really enjoying it and this was about me getting out of a reading slump, I am going to stop here at 54%. I'm not going to continue with this series. Coming out of book 1, I was really interested in how they were going to like overthrow Trevor or get one over in Trevor or like combine the two packs. Like that element of revenge was really driving me and keeping me focused. And it's been so meandering and slow. The development has been so icky. I'm not really even interested in that anymore. I don't care if they ever get revenge on Trevor or if he reigns supreme over all these people forever. And because this book has kind of like made me fall out of love with werewolf shifter stories for a hot minute, I am not going to move in from this into obsession. That was kind of like a stretch goal for me anyways because it was 400 pages when I'm struggling to read like 200-page book. I think what I'm going to do is jump over to horror and go into like Mouthful of Ashes, which I know is short, and use that if it's good as a springboard to go into the hollow places. Overall, this has been about a week worth of reading and I have read about 5.5 books. So I would say that my reading slump is successfully kicked. Werewolf Shifter books for the win on that. Of these 3 series that I've read during this reading vlog, I'd recommend The Weakest Wolf as long as you can get over whatever is going on with a cover that's representing a person of color and then a story that makes no mention of any kind of race or undercurrents or skin color at all. But talk to me, have you guys read anything fun in the werewolf shifter style story? Or like, do you have a good dragon shifter story for me? Because I am really hungry for something with dragons in it that's good instead of just sort of like weird or awkward. And if you've got this far into the video and don't have anything else to say, thanks for watching, and give me a wolf or a full moon emoji in those comments down below. And as always, keep reading. Bye!